The room was dimly lit, the faint hum of machinery the only sound breaking the heavy silence. The council sat around a large metal table, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens displaying maps and reports. Each member stared at the data in front of them, though none spoke. The weight of what they were seeing pressed down on them like an invisible hand. David leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he studied the drone footage. It showed a city once bustling with life now eerily quiet. Cars sat abandoned on streets, doors left open as if people had stepped out mid-journey. Storefronts were untouched, their windows unbroken. Even pets were left behind, lying listlessly near empty food bowls. There were no signs of struggle, no destruction, no chaos, just emptiness. Rachel crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her eyes scanning the same images. She had seen similar reports before, but this time felt different. This wasn't just one town or village, it was happening everywhere. Entire populations were disappearing without explanation. It was as if humanity had simply decided to leave everything behind and vanish into thin air. "This can't be real," muttered Daniel, another council member, shaking his head. His voice broke the silence, startling everyone. People don't just walk away from their lives like this. Not all at once. They did, David replied sharply, pointing at the screen. "Look at the evidence. No fights, no disasters. They're gone. But where?" Rachel asked softly, her tone more curious than accusatory. "And why? What could make millions of people abandon their homes, their families, their entire world?" No one answered. They didn't have answers. All they had were questions and fear. Fear that whatever was causing this might come for them next. Emily entered the room quietly, carrying a folder filled with additional data. She was younger than most of the council members, her face still holding traces of youthful optimism, despite the grim circumstances. Placing the folder on the table, she cleared her throat nervously. "I've analyzed the latest drone sweeps," she began hesitantly. "It's not just cities, small towns, rural areas, even isolated cabins in the woods. Everywhere we look, it's the same thing. People are leaving, or being taken." "Taken?" Daniel echoed, his voice rising slightly. "You think someone or something is doing this?" "I don't know," Emily admitted, fidgeting with the edge of the folder. "But there's something else." She paused, glancing at each person seated around the table. "Some of the places we've surveyed, there are symbols carved into walls and buildings. Strange patterns. I've never seen anything like them." David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Show me," he demanded, his voice firm but tinged with unease. Emily pulled up an image on one of the monitors. The symbol was intricate, almost hypnotica, swirling design that seemed to shift when stared at too long. It reminded David of ancient star charts, but distorted, as if meant to represent something far beyond human understanding. Rachel frowned, leaning closer to get a better look. "Where have I seen these before?" she murmured to herself. Then, suddenly, her eyes widened. "Wait, these are connected to old myths. Stories about beings from the stars visiting Earth. But those were just legends, right?" "Legends or not," David said grimly, "they're here now. And whatever's behind this knows exactly what it's doing." The room fell silent again, the gravity of the situation sinking in deeper with every passing second. The council had always feared the unknown, but now the unknown had arrived and it was taking humanity with it. Emily sat alone in the small, dimly lit lab, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. The glow of the monitor cast shadows on her face as she reviewed the footage again and again. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important hidden in those symbols, something the council wasn't seeing. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Rachel entered quietly, pulling up a chair beside Emily. "Any progress?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with urgency. "I'm not sure," Emily admitted, leaning back in her chair. She rubbed her temples, trying to ease the tension building there. These symbols, they're everywhere. Every location we've checked has them, and they're always the same. It's like whoever or whatever is doing this is leaving a signature. Rachel studied the screen, her eyes narrowing as she examined the swirling patterns. They look familiar, she said after a moment. I've seen designs like these before, but I can't remember where. Emily nodded. That's what I thought too, so I dug deeper into some old archives. These symbols match descriptions from ancient text stacks about gods or beings descending from the stars. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. You think this is connected? That it's real? It's hard to say, Emily replied, her voice cautious. But if it is, then maybe this isn't just random. Maybe it's deliberate. Maybe something is guiding humanity somewhere. The idea hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Neither woman spoke for a long moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. We need to tell David. Emily hesitated. Do you think he'll believe us? He already thinks we're grasping at straws. He might not, Rachel admitted. But we can't keep this to ourselves. If there's even a chance this is true, the council needs to know. Reluctantly, Emily agreed. Together, they gathered the data and headed to the main chamber where David and the others were meeting. The room was tense when they arrived, the council members arguing heatedly about how to respond to the growing crisis. Voices rose and fell, each person offering conflicting ideas. Enough, David shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. We don't have time for this. People are disappearing every day. We need answers, not arguments. Rachel stepped forward, holding up the folder Emily had prepared. We might have something, she said, her voice steady despite the knot of nerves in her stomach. She placed the folder on the table and opened it, revealing images of the symbols alongside excerpts from ancient texts. David frowned as he looked at the documents. What am I looking at? These symbols, Rachel explained, pointing to the images. They're showing up everywhere. People have disappeared, and they match descriptions from myths about celestial beings visiting Earth. Daniel leaned closer, his skepticism evident. Myths? You're basing this on stories? They're more than stories, Emily interjected, her voice firm. These myths describe events where entire communities vanished after seeing signs. In the sky, the details match what's happening now. David studied the images again, his expression unreadable. Even if this is true, he said slowly, what does it mean? Are we saying aliens are taking people? I don't know, Rachel admitted, but it's clear someone or something is behind this, and they're using these symbols to communicate. The room grew quiet as the weight of her words settled over them. For the first time, the council realized they weren't dealing with a natural phenomenon or human error. Something far greater and far stranger was at play. We need to find out who or what is responsible, David said finally, his tone resolute. And we need to do it fast, before it's too late. As the meeting adjourned, Emily lingered behind, staring at the symbols on the screen. Something about them felt wrong, like they were watching her. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, she turned off the monitor and left the room, unaware that the mystery was only beginning to unfold. The bunker was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears and made thoughts louder than words. The council had spent hours debating what to do next, but no decision felt right. David paced back and forth, his boots echoing on the cold metal floor. Rachel sat at the table, staring at the symbols on the screen, her mind racing with possibilities. Emily stood near the door, unsure whether to stay or leave. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls and making everyone freeze. The sound wasn't mechanical, it was alive, almost like a voice trying to speak. David turned toward the entrance, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon holstered at his side. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice sharp and commanding. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the heavy steel door slid open with a hiss. Standing in the doorway was a man, or at least, something that looked like a man. He wore simple clothes, plain and unremarkable, but his presence was anything but ordinary. His eyes glowed faintly, an unnatural light that seemed to pierce through the dimness of the room. "I've been waiting for you," the man said, his voice calm and smooth, as if he were speaking to old friends. David stepped forward, his weapon raised. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The man smiled faintly, unfazed by the threat of the gun. "My name is William. I represent those who have been guiding your people." "Guiding us?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. She stood slowly, her eyes locked on William. "What do you mean?" William's gaze shifted to her, his expression softening. "Your species has reached a crossroads," he explained. "You've exhausted your resources, polluted your world, and fractured your societies. But you've also shown potential creativity, resilience, curiosity. That's why we've chosen you for ascension." "Ascension?" David repeated, his tone skeptical. "What does that even mean?" "It means leaving behind your physical forms and joining us," William replied. "We offer a new existence, free from suffering, free from limits. You'll become part of something greater, collective consciousness spanning the stars." The room was silent as the council processed his words. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. It sounded too good to be true, and yet there was something compelling about it, something that tugged at the edges of her mind. "You expect us to believe this?" David demanded, his voice rising. "That some cosmic force just decided to swoop in and save humanity. Why should we trust you?" William tilted his head, studying David with an unreadable expression. "Trust isn't required," he said simply. "This isn't a negotiation. It's an inevitability. Your people have already begun the transition. Soon, none will remain." Rachel stepped forward, her voice steadier now. "If this is true, if you're offering us a better future, why not explain it to us? Give us proof. Let us decide for ourselves." William's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Proof is unnecessary. Your instincts will guide you. Deep down, you know this is the right path." Before anyone could respond, William turned and walked toward the door. David moved to follow him, but before he could take more than a few steps, William vanished. One moment he was there, solid and real, and the next, he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of ozone in the air. The council stared at the empty doorway, stunned into silence. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What just happened?" "I don't know," David muttered, lowering his weapon. His hands were shaking, though he tried to hide it. "But I'm not buying his story. This is manipulation, pure and simple." Rachel shook her head. "Maybe, or maybe it's exactly what he says it is. Maybe this is our chance to survive." David turned to her, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Survive by giving up everything that makes us human. No, we fight this, whatever it takes." As the argument began again, Emily slipped away unnoticed. She couldn't shake the feeling that William's visit had changed something not just in the bunker, but within herself. For the first time, she wondered if resisting might be the wrong choice. The council's meetings stretched late into the night, but no one seemed to notice. The air was thick with tension, every word spoken, carrying the weight of uncertainty. David and Rachel sat at opposite ends of the table, their disagreement clear, in the way they avoided looking at each other. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples, as if trying to push away a headache. Emily lingered near the corner, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, lost in thought. "You're wrong," David said finally, breaking the uneasy silence. His voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. "We can't just roll over and accept this. If we do nothing, we lose everything. Our identity, our humanity. And what's your plan? Rachel shot back, her tone equally firm. Fight against something we don't even understand. Something that's already ahead of us. We've seen the evidence, David. People are leaving willingly. Maybe they see something we don't. Willingly, David scoffed. How can you be so sure? Did William strike you as trustworthy? He didn't give us answers, he gave us riddles. This isn't about saving us, it's about taking us. Rachel opened her mouth to reply, but Emily interrupted before she could speak. There's something else, she said quietly, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, and she felt her cheeks flush under their gazes. Taking a deep breath, she continued. When William was here, he left something behind. What do you mean? Daniel asked, sitting up straighter. I found traces of DNA on the floor where he stood, Emily explained. It wasn't much, but it was enough to analyze. I ran tests while you were arguing. She paused, glancing at the screen, displaying the results. His genetic code, it's not human, at least, not entirely. The room went silent. David frowned, leaning closer to examine the data. Explain. It's strange, Emily said, pointing to the lines of text scrolling across the monitor. Parts of it match human DNA, but other parts, they're completely alien. It's like he's a mix of both. Rachel stared at the screen, her mind racing. If he's part human, does that mean others like him exist? Or is he unique? I don't know, Emily admitted. But there's more. The alien portions of his DNA, they're structured in patterns I've never seen before. It's almost like they're designed to integrate with ours. David's expression darkened. Integrate? You think they're trying to merge with us? It's possible, Emily replied hesitantly. If what William said about ascension is true, if they want to bring us into their collective, then maybe this is how they're doing it, by blending their biology with ours. Rachel shook her head, clearly troubled. That doesn't make sense. Why would they need to change us physically? Couldn't they just take our minds? Maybe they're preparing us, Daniel suggested, speaking for the first time, like adapting us for whatever comes next. David slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone. This is insane. We're sitting here debating whether or not to let ourselves be turned into experiments. Enough, I say we fight back. And how do you propose we do that? Rachel demanded. We don't even know what we're fighting against. We find a way, David snapped. We always do. Emily watched the argument unfold, her heart sinking. She wanted to believe David, to hold on to hope that humanity could resist, but doubt gnawed at her. What if Rachel was right? What if this was humanity's only chance at survival? And yet, something about William's visit still felt off, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. As the debate dragged on, Emily slipped out of the room unnoticed. She needed air, space to think. Walking down the narrow hallway, she stopped by a small window overlooking the surface. The world outside was dark and lifeless, a stark reminder of what had been lost. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle around her. When she opened them again, she saw something, a faint light flickering in the distance. It wasn't natural. Her stomach tightened as realization dawned. Whatever was happening, it was far from over. The light in the distance pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Emily stood frozen, her fingers gripping the edge of the window frame. It was too far away to make out clearly, but she could feel it, a strange pull, as if the light were calling to her. She shook her head, trying to shake off the sensation, but it lingered, growing stronger with each passing second. What is that? She whispered to herself, though no one was there to hear her. Behind her, footsteps echoed down the hallway. David appeared, his face tense and drawn. Emily, what are you doing out here? She turned to him, pointing toward the light. Do you see that? Out there? David stepped closer, squinting into the darkness. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, his jaw tightened. It's not natural. Whatever it is, it wasn't there before. Do you think it's them? Emily asked, her voice trembling. The ones William talked about. I don't know, David admitted, his hand instinctively moving to the weapon at his side. But we can't ignore it. If they're trying to send us a message or worse, lure us out, we need to be ready. Emily hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. What do we do? We investigate, David said firmly, but cautiously. Rachel and the others will want answers, and we can't afford to jump into this blind. They returned to the main chamber to gather supplies, flashlights, scanners, and protective gear. The rest of the council was still deep in discussion, their voices rising and falling in waves of frustration. Rachel glanced up as David and Emily entered, her brow furrowing. What's going on? She asked. There's something outside, David explained quickly. A light. We're going to check it out. Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're leaving the bunker. Are you insane? It's not safe out there. We don't have a choice, David replied. If this is connected to what's happening, if it's part of their plan, we need to know. Rachel stared at him, her expression conflicted. Finally, she sighed. Fine, but be careful, and take someone with you. You shouldn't go alone. David nodded, turning to Emily. Are you coming? She hesitated for only a moment, before nodding. Yes. Together, they prepared for the journey, strapping on their gear and double-checking their equipment. The airlock hissed as they stepped outside, the cold biting at their skin. The world beyond the bunker was eerily silent, the stars above casting faint light over the barren landscape. The glowing beacon was still distant, its rhythm steady and hypnotic. As they moved closer, Emily felt a strange warmth spreading through her chest, despite the freezing temperature. It wasn't unpleasant, but it made her uneasy. Do you feel that? She asked softly. David nodded, his grip tightening on his flashlight. Yeah, it's strange, like it's alive. When they finally reached the source of the light, they stopped in their tracks. It wasn't a machine or a device, it was a cluster of translucent orbs, hovering just above the ground. They pulsed in unison, casting soft hues of blue and white across the desolate terrain. Each pulse sent a ripple through the air, vibrating gently against their skin. What are they? Emily murmured, taking a cautious step forward. Before David could answer, the orbs began to shift, rearranging themselves into a pattern. It was the same symbol they had seen carved into buildings, the swirling design that seemed to twist and change when stared at too long. Emily's breath caught in her throat. It's communicating. She whispered. No, David said sharply, grabbing her arm. We're leaving now. But as they turned to go, the orbs brightened, flooding the area with light. A voice filled the air, not spoken, but felt, resonating deep within their minds. You cannot resist, it said, calm and unwavering. Your place awaits. Emily froze, her heart pounding. David tugged at her arm, shouting something she couldn't hear, over the sound of her own racing thoughts. The light grew brighter, enveloping them completely. And then, everything went dark.